Christine will start the...
Okay, thanks so much, Anna, and welcome to everyone. My name is Christine Langenpepper, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this OECD Local Development Forum webinar on school to work transitions, learning from local actions. So first of all, a few words about the OECD's Local Development Forum. It's the OECD's network combining thousands of local development practitioners around the world. And we like to think of this forum as being the key link between the work of the OECD and our local communities. So helping to disseminate the OECD's work beyond ministries and really having an ear for what is going on the ground in the local communities and how we can help to share good innovative ideas across local communities in the OECD. So in this respect, we're very pleased to organize this webinar together with the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions, which is a very long-standing partner for our forum on this key issue on how to get young people into the labor market, because across the OECD, 1 in 10 young people aged between 15 and 29 years are actually unemployed. So they are looking for a job, but they cannot find one. And obviously there are differences within across countries. So some countries obviously have fewer young people looking for jobs, some have many more, but there's also very stark differences within countries. So for example, in the EU, the youth unemployment rate is nearly 4 percentage points higher in rural areas than in urban areas. And this is an issue that is discussed in many different OECD fora, but today is really about the idea of what can be done on the local level. So how do we bring together training institutions and employers, like how do we help young people to make a successful transition from school into working life. And obviously many young people we would not even need to talk about because they successfully managed this transition with some general available support, but there's many who don't, and many who are more disadvantaged. They don't get support through their communities, and therefore our question to be discussed today is like, how can we support those more disadvantaged young people? Which role can social economy actors play? Like which type of roles can training providers and employers play? So this is, yeah, I'll introduce in a little while our panelists, but for now I would like to give the floor to Gunnar Andersson, who's from the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions, for his opening remarks. The floor is yours, Gunnar.
Thank you very much, Christine. Yes, very good to be in this seminar, and then also we're welcoming the good cooperation we have with the OECD in these questions, and have had that during our work for almost 10 years now in these questions. The Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions have tried to provide facts and projects and new initiatives connected to early school leaving and needs question for this time, and we see it as a very important question, not only for our members who are the local authorities and regions actually, and we are also the employer organization for municipalities and regions in Sweden. So this is of course a very interesting and important question, but as we mostly have worked on national level concerning of course in Sweden, we tried to reach out and learn from others in more transnational context as well, and through channels like OECD, but also EU of course, and also since 2014, we have been working with the Baltic Sea region, and 8 countries around the Baltic Sea. And we do this as a connection to the strategy of the Baltic Sea region, which is provided by the EU Commission as well. So, and we call it the flagship school to work. And as the name says, we're working with to try to dedicate and contribute to the national learning within the area of education and labor market for young people around the Baltic Sea region. And the flagship addresses specific objectives in the European Pillar of Social Rights, the EU strategy for Baltic Sea region, and also in the area education, and contributes to fulfilling the Sustainable Development Goals of Agenda 2030. So since we started the flagship, we strive to improve its members' ability to smoothen transition for youth from school to work within the Baltic Sea region. And we do that as a platform for learning, development, and innovation. Within this platform, we have 3 different action areas. That's preventing early school leaving, integration of youth, of young people in need situation, and in addition to these 2, a horizontal action for education and training. So as I said, we strive to strengthen the prevention work actually, and increase the knowledge and get better measures on local and regional level. And one thing that we have discovered is that the strategy on the national level is not as strong as it needs to be. We see it as a comprehensive strategy is needed for from the local level up to the national level in order to make impact. And for one thing, it's a lack of systems for mapping and tracking young people throughout the school system and further into the labor market. Also, early warning systems that can provide schools and authorities to set in the right action in the right time. So those kind of schemes we know is one of the success factors in preventing dropouts. And perhaps we could have some follow-up system for these questions, similar to PISA follow-up as OECD has. That's one thing. And finally, we can, of course, see consequences of the pandemic. Easy jobs disappear, school lockdowns, and education at home are factors that had the impact on this. And those who had the difficult before the pandemic have not improved their chances to get a foothold in the labor market. And we can see that the answer to this is the same as before the pandemic: enable education for everyone. And if you think that training is expensive, try ignorance, we can say. And we work with, so we are very focused on the prevention work and to finish and to complete their studies. So I that's my final marks, and back to you, Christine. The panel, I hope.
Indeed, the panel. So I would first like to introduce our panelists a bit, and maybe they would like to turn on the cameras now. So first of all, let me introduce Anna Lidström, who works actually on exactly this School to Work flagship at Solar. And Anna has a background in teaching and research, and her research interests are exactly on what you just mentioned, Honan. Dropout prevention, early school leaving, also equity in education, and applying that in practice. So since 2012, Anna has worked for the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions and supported many evaluations of projects at the national level aimed at reducing early school leaving and training, re-engaging young people who had left the education system early and obviously youth in a need situation. Anna currently works with Solar on designing a new educational program to support schools and local authorities in their work to increase school completion rates and reduce school dropouts, and thereby obviously also reducing need rates. Anna, very nice to have you here. And then next of our panelists is Zoe Fried, and Zoe is a career manager at the POSSE Foundation in the United States. The POSSE Foundation is a college access and youth leadership development program, and it has program offices in 10 cities across the United States. And the foundation identifies high school students with academic and leadership potential and places them in supportive and also multicultural teams of up to 10 students at a time in selected universities. So sorry, very nice to have you with us here today. And well, this event is about youth. So I'm very pleased to actually have a young person to discuss this topic with us, because we don't only want to discuss about young people, we want to discuss with young people. And we have with us today Brian Ashia as a representative of the OECD Youth-Wise Advisory Board. Brian is from Dublin in Ireland, and he has a background in law and with economics, and he's currently completing also a very local-minded degree, the 4 Cities Euromasters in Euro Studies. So welcome also to you, Brian. And then I'll turn to our second Anna of today, Anna Ambrose, and I'll later make sure I get this right and address the right question to the right Anna. Anna is director of the London Progression Collaboration in the UK, and the London Progression Collaboration is a not-for-profit initiative which supports businesses to create new apprenticeships for low-paid or low-skilled Londoners. The London Progression Collaboration has supported businesses across a wide range of sectors, from tech to social care and hospitality to construction, and has created over 550 apprenticeships in the last 18 months alone. So I think this is a really impressive statistic. Anna has also written on education policy for the London Progression's Collaboration host organization, the Institute for Public Policy Research, which I'm sure many of you know, and previously also worked for an education charity in the UK, the Ambition Institute. Yeah, so very nice to have you with us here today, Anna. And then finally, we have Vincenzo Porzio, who's the communications manager at the Cooperativa La Paranza in the Catacombe di Napoli. And you've got the matching background for this scene. And La Paranza is a social cooperative that was founded already in 2006, and which has helped to revalorize the artistic and cultural heritage in the Riones Sanita neighborhood in Naples. And in doing that, achieving that, it also created training courses and job placements and exchange and networking for young people, organizations, and associations. So big welcome to all of you. And I think we'll now start this panel discussion with a first question by me to all of the panelists. To the audience, you have, as we mentioned before, you've got the question and answer tool. So if you have any questions on for one of the speakers or for all of them together, please place them in the Q&A session, and we'll try to address them a little bit later in this discussion. So Anna Liljeström, I'll start with you on your work with a bit the big picture. I think Gunnar already mentioned before that you're doing work in the Baltic Sea region. So what are the biggest issues there in actually smoothing this school to work transitions, and also how do these play out in different local contexts, because not every solution works everywhere potentially. And which type of programs do you think work particularly well?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on today. It's really interesting to be here today, and I hope that we can have an interactive session. So I will try to keep my answer to your questions fairly short. As Gunnar has mentioned, the focus of our work is on school completion, rather, preventing young people from leaving school early, prematurely. While it's become quite clear that equipping individuals with sufficient knowledge and skills, speaking also in broad terms, in terms of formal and informal skills, and perhaps health and self-esteem and all these factors, that is very important for supporting the school to work transition. As Gunnar mentioned, early school leaving obviously is a very important factor that contributes to young people ending up in a neat situation. So we need to start early, and in broad terms, we need to work, as Gunnar said earlier, we need to work with a comprehensive strategy. That is quite obvious, and that is still an issue. If we target merely, for example, the NEET population, once they have dropped out of school, we're not going to be efficient. So we need to work at all levels at the same time with prevention and intervention and compensation. So that is really the big issue. And so that has been the focus for our work, keeping young people in education and training as long as possible to equip them to make the transition. And it's also quite obvious that the problem is very much many factors connected to school contributes to the early school leaving process. So it's really, this process is really about failure by school, failure by the training and training providers, rather than failure of students at school. So that's what we're trying to target. And there is evidence that these measures have been working. In the European countries, there was a headline target for 2020 to reduce the early school leaving rates to less than 10% by 2020. And that has also happened. So in 2012, the rate was 12.7%, and it's now down to 9.9%. So it's good news that the strategy is working. Also, the NEET rates were reduced as well until 2019 when COVID hit. So obviously, as Gunnar said, that has had an impact. But the efforts, these preventative efforts, are now continued within the program, the Pathways to School Success, which includes additional perspectives to continue to shift the focus to school completion. And that also many more initiatives are being taken at different national levels. So you can, in Sweden, for example, the Swedish government is making an investment to increase the school completion rate, an effort in which SALAR also has a key role. And that brings us to the programs that work. Obviously, early school living, like ending up in a NEET situation, is a very multifaceted, complex issue. It's a cumulative process, we know, of disengagement, and many factors affect this process. So obviously, the different measures must vary. And as you mentioned in the introduction, Christine, it's obvious that there's variation between regions and at local level and between nations. The NEET rates vary, and the reasons for why youngsters end up in these situations vary with the local context. So the measures must also vary. However, what I would like to highlight is the common core factors of the successful programs and measures that we can see from research and from systematic reviews and in our experiences. And the first thing I have already mentioned, the comprehensive approaches. It's very important. I hope we can have more discussion about that and how to make that work, as Gunnar said. And obviously that's very much connected to governance. We can see, as Gunnar mentioned, that this governance is a really key factor. Having a national strategy, clear targets, it really helps the process. It ensures this coherent and systematic and coordinated approach that is needed, and also helps efficient use of resources, because this work really does require strong coordination and cooperation between national, regional, local actors. So that is another key point. At the same time, obviously, as I mentioned, schools, local stakeholders need autonomy too, to identify and develop local solutions that correspond to the needs that they have. And they also obviously have lots of knowledge about their the students and the young people in their area. So there needs to be a balance between that bottom-up and top-down approach. And another important issue, a success factor, a key factor that Gunnar also mentioned that we need to come back to, I think, is the issue of data, which data is collected in order to develop and implement targeted policies and address early leaving and the needs situation. We need to understand the scale of the problem. We need to understand the reasons behind it. So this really requires very specific data collection systems at national, regional, and local level. And at this point, there is still some challenges connected to this issue, but it's very important that we take steps forward here. Many countries, and at regional level and local level and at school level, obviously there are student registers that can be employed to monitor these important data, the distress signals that we need to pick up early. They might signal that there is a problem, so that we can pick up students that will be in need of different kinds of support to make not only to make it in school, but to in the future make the transition to the labor market. So we need to find those students early, and also at the organizational level and local level, obviously, and regional level, there might be different measures that need to be applied. So data collection, very important still, and that's connected to the early warning systems, as Gunnar mentioned. Another issue is keeping that holistic perspective, a success factor in this work, obviously connected to the different needs that students have that we mentioned in the beginning, is the cross-sectoral cooperation. That's really a key, a success factor. Schools obviously play an important role in addressing early school leaving, but they really cannot cope with the work in isolation by themselves. So that's something that still needs to be addressed, because we see that there's not always a strong coordination from a national level. Obviously, the cooperation needs to involve a wide range of stakeholders, not only social services, youth services, outreach, care workers, psychologists needs to be involved, obviously NGOs, and we will hear more about this today, businesses, volunteers, etc. They all need to be involved, and then it really needs to be a good structure, maybe functions to coordinate the work, to form a coherent strategy for making this work happen and efficient. And there are still challenges connected to those issues. However, there are models for how to coordinate such cross-sectoral cooperation in systematic ways that have shown to be very beneficial for the individuals and the professionals involved. And I think we need to look at those examples. One really good example is Getting It Right for Every Child, the GERFIC model from Scotland, that aims to support families by making sure that children and young people can receive the right help at the right time from the right people. So they use the school as the starting point, and connect those other services and the other sectors to the school. And this model has gained increased attention in more countries in Europe, and for example is on trial in at regional level in Sweden. And I think those kind of models should really be put forward, so that we form a clear structure for how to make this collaboration more efficient, maybe create functions and allocate responsibility, and form a really consistent approach to planning the support for the young people. And the Scotland model is done through a single planning framework called a child's plan. So I think those models are really important to lift forward. And finally, I know my time is probably up, I just want to mention also flexibility. It's obviously connected to this holistic perspective, and that students have different needs and they end up in a need situation for different reasons. So obviously there needs to be flexibility in policies to increase really the permeability of education pathways, to minimize the risk of early leaving. We need to offer students obviously a wide range of programs and alternative pathways, and provide opportunities for students to change tracks or programs that doesn't really meet their needs, and really help them also make this smooth transitions between education and if you're in a need situation to come back and so forth. And also perhaps have a look at measures to improve the recognition of skills and qualifications that can help students progress to the next level or re-engage in training if they have left the system prematurely. Yeah. Okay, so I will stop there.
Thank you so much, Anna. I think flexibility, that's a very important one, and individualized approaches. And actually, turning to Zoe, I think your organization is supporting youth that at least already have made some step in life. So they're looking into the transition from high school to university, and it's also taking a very comprehensive approach to working with young people. So if you could tell us a little bit more about this comprehensive approach and how the career program fits into it, and what kind of results you're seeing from these kind of programs.
Sure, thank you, and thank you for having me. So we work with, it seems like a bit of a different population than the other panelists, but essentially we work with students who want to go to university, right, are making that transition. And our career program specifically works to help them make the transition from university to work, right? So they've already kind of gotten to that point, but we do see a lot of the same challenges that the other panelists see, just encouraging them to complete college and university and then to also make that transition. So our organization's been around for over 30 years, and we started really just focusing on the transition from high school to university, and supporting students through that process, making sure that they actually graduated and completed their programs. And then our career program was added on only about 10 years ago, when we realized that our students were, really excelling in college and university, being leaders on campus, doing well academically, but they didn't have the foundations to succeed in the workplace. And they just kind of floundered. Many of our students, or the vast majority of the students we work with, are first generation college students, so the first in their family to go to college and university. And so a lot of them did not have that home support to make that transition to professional positions. And that's really where our program comes in. So, we select our students when they're in high school. We provide them with a full, here where college and university is very expensive, we provide them with a full tuition scholarship to go to school for all 4 years. They get a faculty mentor. As Christine mentioned, they're put in a multicultural group of 10 at all of the schools we work with. So there's 10 students from our program on each of those campuses that really serve as a support to get them through that process. And then we provide intensive training through our career program. And our career program focuses on a few different things. We focus on internships and research opportunities, so giving them work experience and exposure to their career field while they're actually in school, so during summers and even the semesters. We do career development workshops with them, so skill building, training them with how to write a resume, a cover letter, how to interview, speaking with different folks in professions so they can see what path might be the right fit for them. We also have a career mentorship program. So I know, Anna, you mentioned bringing volunteers. This is a big way that we bring in volunteers through our program. So, if you want to go into a particular field as a student, we match you with a seasoned professional in that field who can really help to guide you through that process and the nuances in that particular field. We also work with our students to help them go through, get competitive fellowships and go to graduate school, different graduate and professional programs. And then we have a really strong alumni network. And we find that that's one of the ways that we're really effective, is that we connect our students who are typically, in the US, it's an old term, at-risk students, right? But first-generation college students, low income, students of color who maybe often are the first people in their family to go through this process, connecting them with alumni from our program who have gone through a lot of similar experiences can help them not just complete school, but help them to transition successfully into the workplace and also deal with a lot of the challenges that they may face in the professional space as well. So those are a few of the ways that we work on that. I can share more later about our measures of success, but that's a bit about our career focus.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very inspiring program, and I think it's would actually be very good to hear Ryan next now. Ryan, you've kind of certainly made the first very big step in life, like making obviously going to school, having a very exciting degree to follow. So from your perspective, why do you think that some young people struggle with this transitions while others don't? And what do you think, in your experience, like works particularly well in this, like making this, well, a step from initial school to university, but then maybe you'll be looking out for a program like the one that the Foster Foundation offers for the next step in life. But maybe to first touch a bit on this, this first transition. Thank you.
Christine, you said something very interesting earlier, which was there's not just differences across OECD countries, there's also differences within them. And I would go a step further and say within cities, within neighborhoods, there's also massive differences. And this, as urbanists or urban studiers, this kind of place-based analysis is something we're very interested in. So the question, do some people have more trouble than others? Yes, of course. But to dig a little deeper, we can ask, well, where are the people coming from where they are struggling more? And then we can ask, what's the economic character of the area? What's the social character of the area? What's the cultural character of the area? To kind of get down to the nitty-gritty and find out who's actually are the people we're trying to help. Who are these needs? Where are they? And I think from my own analysis, I'm going to tell you about 3 programs that I have had some interactions with. And something that's very big for me is information asymmetry. Even if a program is available, it is not necessarily accessible or attainable the same for different factions of young people. And when we talk about accessibility, I mean, as young people, we have varying, divergent lives all across the OECD. We might be slightly disinclined to be able to take in information in a way that might be more easier for someone who has remained in education or is in university. Some people have had difficulties in their dealings with the state, whether with police trouble, in courts. People from migrant backgrounds, they might have language barriers, they might have had trouble with immigration services, general bureaucracy that can be quite difficult to navigate. So we understand that transition from school to work is a leap, but it's not an equidistant leap for everyone. So if you have people who are disinclined to engage with the information that is technically available but not accessible, one of the ways we can bridge the gap that exists for people who are more disadvantaged and face more barriers is by engaging with them at a different level. And I think community engagement is an incredible way to harness the existing resources and the place where they are embedded in order to get this information across. And I'm going to give you 3 short examples of programs which I have interacted with, which I really feel they did this effectively. And the first one is in Brussels, and it's called TADA, which is Atelier d'Avenir. And they run a program in about 50 schools in disadvantaged areas of Brussels, so Anderlecht, Molenbeek, Schaerbeek, and Sint-Just. And they run basically a Saturday school for 3 years. But I got involved because I was invited as a part of my rugby club to do a session, one of the Saturday sessions with the children. And it was only when I got there, I realized what they were doing. These kids, every weekend, they do amazing stuff. They go on visits to newspapers, to architecture studios, to factories. They did sports days with us. And it's amazing amount of, horizon widening and a chance to realize what's available and potentially avenues to get there. And after the 3-year program, these kids, these young people, they're mostly they're all in primary school, in fact, they graduate and they join what's called the TADA Alumni Network. And it is no surprise that the drop-off rate from school for the alumni members is 0.4%, which by anyone's estimations is an incredible result. So I'll finish up at the end with a conclusion, but I'm going to move on to the next organization, which is in Denmark, and they're called Bubi, which means city bee. And on its face, it's a socioeconomic enterprise that uses local beehives around the city to sell honey. But it's actually far more than that. They do workshops where they try to introduce social and ecological principles to children and young people by asking them questions like, what's it like to be a bee? And I think the capacity for young people to use what they're good at, use their imagination, and whatever get introduced to these ecological and social ideas, which are very, very important, and these visions and these ideals, bringing them into the market when you arrive there, to have that, idealism almost, to see a future that we don't currently have the resources we have. That's massively important. And also it's also connected to place, because the honey that they do produce, all of the honey, say from Norway, it's all kept together and it has a specific color. So I used to be proud as punch. I used to volunteer there on a Thursday morning, and I'd get my little pot of Osterbo honey, and I used to have it there, pride of place, in the kitchen. And I think, understanding the connection between the natural world and your own place, this fusion is very, very valuable for children. It's inspiring. I was inspired there. Another amazing program. And finally, there is another program in Copenhagen as well, but it's based specifically in Bellehøj, which is, for anyone who knows, Copenhagen is at the top of the hill in Norway, and it has maybe an unwarranted reputation, which, it's a very undeserved reputation for maybe trouble, maybe social ills. But we did, with our university, we did a project where we did 2 video documentaries, one from the outsider perspective and one with the kids who led the creation process. They were the protagonists in the filming, and the level of pride they feel, but also the access that they gained by talking to a hugely different cohort. And the actual program it started about 5 or 6 years ago from nothing. There was one person with an office in the bottom of one of the apartment blocks. And the difference now between where it started and the relationships they've built and the ability they have to help people with certain bureaucratic processes, if they're from a migrant background, help them with job applications. If they have mental health difficulties, they can be directed in, that applies to whatever problems they have a resource. And a very strong relationship with the 2 people who run it, Catherine and Yusuf, to really be able to empower themselves with, you know, non-arbitrary bits of responsibility, which also apply to the other two groups, to build capacity within people and build capacity across the community. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap up, but yeah, it's hugely inspiring programs. They do bridge the gap in terms of letting young people know what's available, how to approach it, and how to make this leap a little bit smaller. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Brian, and please do maybe share the names and maybe even web pages to those programs in the chat for everyone. And then we'll move to Anna and Rose now, and the type of program that your organization is offering, which is possibly often people who have not successfully managed a first transition in their life. But then it's not only like preparing them for the labor force, but also making sure that they get a good quality opportunities, and through an apprenticeship, which usually is meant to offer not just a job, but a job that offers experience and training in London, that is. So could you tell us a little bit about like what gaps you see when like working with employers and connecting young people? So what are the challenges and what are the opportunities?
Wonderful, thank you, and thank you very much for having me today. So I want to just, I guess, kind of preface a bit of an answer to that question with a little bit of background on apprenticeships policy in England, just for kind of clarity. So as you'd expect and as you set out, an apprenticeship is a paid job with an expectation of training, and that is set at 20% of the apprentice's time in England will be spent on off-the-job training. But apprenticeships in England are available at levels 2 to 7, so that's GCSE level right up to master's degree level, for all ages of employee, so right from those making their first transition into work through to very experienced members of staff, and for both new and existing staff. So when you talk about an apprenticeship, it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. And the apprenticeship levy policy in England was introduced in 2017, which means that employers who have an annual salary bill of over £3 million pay into their apprenticeship levy fund. It's mandatory, they don't have any choice over that. And that money is then ring-fenced within that business and can only be accessed by them in order to pay for apprenticeship training. And the funding for small businesses to access apprenticeships then works rather separately via a government co-investment mechanism whereby the government subsidises access for small businesses to apprenticeships. And that's really important background for the work that we're doing in London, because since that levy policy was introduced in 2017, we've seen really significant falls in the apprenticeships accessed by young people, so those transitioning between school and work for the first time, between apprenticeships at those lower levels, and in apprenticeships offered by small and medium-sized businesses. And those facts are really closely related and form a really important backdrop to our work. Because for young people especially, unless we support small businesses local to them to create those apprenticeships for young people at those lower levels, which have kind of vanished recently, we simply won't have both the quantity and quality of local opportunities that we need to support young people to progress into and in work. And so the research which kind of informed our work in London identified two really important gaps in terms of the demand side or employer facing needs. And we focused there on the basis that supporting young people and low paid workers, which other organisations do really brilliantly, will ultimately only work if those local employment opportunities are available for people to move into. So feeling that employer side work is really, really vital part of this ecosystem. And the first of those gaps was a knowledge and capacity gap for small businesses, which was a really significant barrier to them engaging in a complex and changing apprenticeship system in England at that point, where there were also quite significant disincentives for the training providers themselves to be supporting small businesses to access their services. And secondly, the fact that the larger levy paying businesses who were paying into that apprenticeship levy fund were really clearly going to significantly underspend on what was in their apprenticeship levy pots. And those funds expire after 24 months, they kind of vanish into the system. And that, because London has, relatively speaking, low levels of apprenticeship starts relative to the rest of the UK, meant that actually that apprenticeship funding was going to be flowing out of the capital rather than contributing to solving some of London's social and labour market challenges. So our business support service aims to address both of those challenges. So offering the very, very practical hands-on support to small and medium-sized businesses to access that apprenticeship system and to offer high quality opportunities for young people. And then leveraging that funding from large businesses who have the opportunity to transfer funds to support smaller businesses to take on apprentices. So that those are the kind of two core elements of our work which really look to meet those needs. And although our work is targeted at a really broad cohort of low-paid Londoners, young people have become an increasing priority cohort for us over the last 18 months, especially young people from disadvantaged and underrepresented backgrounds. And that reflects both the impact of the pandemic, which others have talked about, on that group, and also the priorities of the businesses that we're working with, many of whom are really driven to create those opportunities that are needed. And I think that work has revealed two further gaps that we're really keen to work on as we develop our model. And the first of those is around line management as a really key driver of an apprentice's or a young employee's experience and of the progression outcomes in work, where we know that for lots of small businesses, they don't necessarily have the HR processes to support really good line management. Many line managers at those kind of levels are sort of accidental line managers who haven't necessarily had any training. So we feel that building a programme of support throughout the young person's apprenticeship, which actually builds the skills of their line manager to support them, is something really important that we're really hoping to get the opportunity to do. And secondly, and really crucially, we've seen a really big disconnect, I think, between organisations in London who offer that great pre-employment and pre-apprenticeship training to young people, and the businesses and training providers who are looking to recruit to apprenticeship vacancies. So the first group says that they have lots of apprenticeship ready candidates who are looking for opportunities. And then the employers say that they're struggling to recruit and can't find the candidates. So we see a real need to better join up those two parts of the system, which clearly isn't really working at the moment. So I think that's a really crucial gap in terms of smoothing those transitions for young people between education and the labour market. There are plenty else that we could say about kind of careers advice and guidance and the complexity for young people of taking anything other than a very kind of straightforward university route out of school. But I think I've kind of covered the core points of what we're learning.
Okay, so thank you so much. And I think some of these themes might actually resonate with Vincenzo and what your organization is doing, which is bridging kind of both sides, like local quality job opportunities for young people and bringing together. So tell us a bit about your organization and how it actually supports young people and employers in the Naples region.
Hi everyone, thank you Christine. And yes, my organization is a no-profit organization who works for the valorization of the cultural heritage of Rione Sanità neighborhood. And especially we manage the catacombs of Naples. So we create experience for visitors. This is our core business of our organization. And also we want to promote our neighborhood to let people discover it. Imagine that Sanità neighborhood, it's one of the most ancient districts in Naples, and also it's a popular district. So inside we have a lot of the biggest Italian problem. On one side, it's like a medal. On one side, we have the beauty of the district, like building, the catacombs, churches, and so on. On the other side, we have these big problems, and especially high density population, high unemployment rate, which is about 60%, and also high school drop-off rate, which is around 30–40%, which is a big problem. No, as it came out from the previous pictures, we in each neighborhood we have different problems. So we are facing this problem, and how with our organization we create, as you say, high quality job opportunities for youth with the cultural heritage that they have at home. And on one side, we create a really great quality job opportunities in terms of salary, hours, the right environment, and also we try to do a good job between the top management, as we can say, and everyone who works in the organization. It's more the environment. It's like to feel part of a family. This is really important for us. The second point, which is one of the, we can say, the secret of our success, it's the long training that we do. And it starts from the first, as we say, the first selection of the human resource. And after we choose the person that can join the organization, they start a really long training with us, which is at least 6 months. And it's really important to say that we don't hire the people who has the most beautiful CV. We hire people that they have the highest motivation. We hire people that they want to change themselves and they want to change the place where they live. We don't ask for people for bachelor. I mean, it's not mandatory, because we know that once they are in the organization, they start to develop themselves. And it comes out that then they choose to go to university school. And with us, they start to study languages like English, Spanish, and so on. So the message is that we try to give opportunities to the ones that they didn't have opportunities in life. Also, going to the school, it's a matter of a choice. No, it's a matter of opportunities. And in some of the districts like ours, the people that maybe they never hear about going to university because no one in their family goes to university. So it's a really a self-development program that they start with us. The final goal is you have to be a guide of the catacombs of Naples. But we know that actually the goal is you have to develop yourself. And this is a cost for our organization, of course, because it means that our brand who takes care about human resource and training, we have like 3 people fully dedicated to the training and the development of human resource. And they teach English, they teach history, archaeology, and also they give them the value of the organization, which is, now we don't have time to go deeper in our value, but you can read it on our website. So the last human resource who come in the organization have to have the most important role in the organization, because as a guide they have to transfer everything about the history of the place and the history of the organization. So this is the biggest choice that we did in the past. So to do a constant investment on human resource, and it doesn't start to hire the high CV, the best CV, but we hire the most motivated people who want to change. Starting from this point, then we start like a program which is inside the organization. So I'm going to stop, and I hope I answered to your question, and I gave the idea about how we work.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vincenzo. I've reminded the audience to please, if you have questions to the panelists, please include them in the Q&A. I can't see any for now. I think overall I felt that there's like two themes that seem to connect all of our speakers. I mean, the first one for me seems to be like this question about engaging young people in different, I mean, it may be different stages in their life. I mean, Brian gave a couple of examples that even started in primary school, but to get this motivation and aspiration in young people from any type of background, not only those that are silver spoon fed with ideas all the time, but to really get that across. And then later, obviously, there may be education need to work, but then there's this question about making the successful transition into work, so working with employers. So maybe unless there are any more questions from the audience, I think it would be maybe good to discuss those two topics. I see there's one question for Vincenzo in the regular chat, which Vincenzo, maybe you can just type an answer to.
Yeah, because, I can see.
Yeah. So should we maybe start off with this employer connection question? I know, Zoe, that this is something where your organization is very active in making this connection with employers. Can you tell us in a couple of words on how you actually make that happen?
Sure. So we work really closely with, we have across the country over 200, we call them our career partners, but they're private companies and nonprofit organizations and government organizations as well that have said, you know, essentially for us, like we want to have a more diverse workforce. And so, you know, we want to bring in people who are not the traditional people coming through our hiring pipelines. And so we want to partner with an organization like yours to ensure that those people do come in and we can kind of build them up, you know, starting after they leave college and university, but continuing into our management ranks and things like that. And so essentially they agreed to reserve one internship spot, seems like an apprenticeship in the UK would be a similar, work similarly, but one spot for our scholars. You know, some hire up to 30 of our scholars every summer, or, you know, 50 post-graduation, but the requirement is one, and essentially our scholars and alumni get like a leg up in entering those companies and organizations through the partnership. And then we also bring them in for other events so that they can really help to train our scholars, which is what we call, you know, our students when they're in college, so that they're really well prepared to get those positions. So they come in and do interviewing workshops, you know, on how to really succeed in an interview. They sit on our career panels and talk about their paths. You know, pre-COVID, we did a lot of site visits, and we'd go to their offices and we'd get a tour and speak with the heads of different departments, just so that our students really have exposure, because, you know, a lot of them grew up with parents who are not in the professional space. And so getting them exposed to that world is so important in helping them to make that transition and helping them to be really desirable candidates when they apply to work, for jobs in those companies and organizations. But it really is a partnership. Those companies and organizations have said, we want students who are trained to be leaders and who are from more diverse backgrounds. And then, of course, we get the benefit of, giving our students a leg up to get into those spaces as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe Anna Ambrose in this case to pick up on this, because I think you also do a lot of work, and you said that this is like one of the key issues in engaging with the employers who may not know about the opportunities and then successfully placing people with them. So you picked up, you mentioned a bit of that before. Maybe you could expand a little bit on this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our work with small businesses is simply helping them to understand how to kind of go through the steps to be ready to take on an apprentice, whether that's a young person or not. And a lot of that is around kind of overcoming some of the myths around apprenticeships, which might be based on the system 10, 20 years ago, that sort of thing. And then helping with the very practical steps of navigating their way through identifying the right apprenticeship standard, so the programme that somebody will follow, finding a training provider who's going to meet their needs and potentially support them with recruitment. So we work with some fantastic training providers who have really strong priorities around opening up particular career pathways to be more accessible to people from more diverse backgrounds. And, although we don't ourselves kind of place candidates in those roles, we work with a lot of third sector partners who are delivering those kind of pre-apprenticeship programs or identifying people who need that support from schools, etc., to help kind of do the connecting piece within the ecosystem, really. I think the other thing that I would say, which I touched on at the end of my original answer around those transitions into work and employment, is the need to kind of smooth that pathway for young people, and certainly if you're a young person applying to university, even though we know there are plenty of barriers there to people who are perhaps the first in their family to do so, nevertheless you complete the UCAS process. The teachers in your school will mostly have been through that process themselves. That is a relatively well-trodden and straightforward path, and yet for young people who want to move into an apprenticeship or a traineeship or some of the other routes into work, actually they're having to complete multiple applications to multiple employers. There are an array of different places that they need to be looking for opportunities, and in many cases there won't be somebody in their school who has personal experience of having trodden that path before to help advise them. And so talked about the kind of information asymmetry that Brian mentioned earlier. I think it's a really kind of pronounced situation for young people who don't necessarily want to go to university but want to move straight into work, and just need that support to navigate what is an incredibly complicated system. We had a young person who's in an apprenticeship that we've supported, was telling us about the sheer number of applications she'd had to make before she found that opportunity, and the resilience that demands of someone who's leaving school and trying to navigate that for the first time. I think is it's a huge demand to place on people, and if we could make that policy and that system work better, it would be in everybody's interests, in not just young people's but also employers, in being able to find those candidates more easily.
Thanks so much, Anna. Brian, I saw you nodding a couple of times. I think to what was just being said. I think what I think you mentioned a couple of really good examples on how to these programs in Brussels and Copenhagen could, give this aspiration to young people. What I often ask myself is when you tell us about these programs, it seems so straightforward. It seems like, exactly. This is what you need. I sometimes have the feeling that maybe part of the issue is that it's others are designing policies for young people. But then it is about the young people, and it would be more about like designing it together with them. So is this also something where you often see a gap when like whatever system you navigate yourself, or like your friends and peers navigate, and you're like, this has clearly not been designed by people like me?
Yeah, no, it's true. Like I often like to think of policy, you know, it's just paper. And until you see the impacts of that in the public and private lives of the people it's trying to impact, it just remains on paper. And I think it's a very valid point about you're reading, you know, youth policy or social policy, and they clearly have very, very little reflection on what the real concerns of youth are. It is, I put my hands up and say sometimes it is difficult to know how to begin that process if, as an institution, for example, you just don't have the facilities, you don't have the basis in what you've been doing up to now to then try to change this process to that extent. I will tell you, like, that's difficult, but many things are difficult, but we still have to do them, because if the outcomes are going to be better, then that is a righteous avenue to go down. And I'd also like to say, just in reference to Anna's point about streamlining this movement from work, the recruitment process is absolutely, it's tiring. It's incredibly tiring. And the other thing I think is, I also think it's an antiquated process. I do not think young people who don't have very much experience translate well onto a 2-page CV. So we're asking people to do things that are not really relevant anymore. You know, why isn't it earlier? For example, with OECD Youthwise, I didn't send a CV. We sent a 90-second clip discussing policy, where I can actually represent myself rather than writing down, oh, I was in school from this year to this year and I worked for 4 months here and 4 months there, which really, it's not much learning for anyone in that. It's not an effective process. And like I say, all this editing, the idea that people have skills or access to computers to be doing all of these applications, it's very one-sided. It's not thinking about young people, and I think there's massive work to do in that area to make it easier.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, we had in the chat actually a question about COVID. That was actually also a bit my question, maybe to whoever wants to take that one first, is actually, well, obviously COVID brought many changes to our life, and we had to, at many times, to be innovative on many different fronts. So what type of innovations to the work of your organizations did COVID bring that were for the good? So Zoom fatigue and is certainly one that we don't want to keep, and we're all looking out for meeting people in person again, also for events like this one in the future. So that one is certainly not one that we would like to keep, but what other innovative things did you come up with changing your organizations that will definitely keep on for the future?
The pre-booking system. It's something that we were already working on it in terms of online booking, because the catacombs, it's really big, but it's not like a museum. And with the COVID, everyone learned to book in advance. So this really helps the organization, but it doesn't have nothing to do with youth.
Yeah, but it's a very relevant one. I mean, I know for many occasions this summer, like pre-booking the cultural activities, and yeah, it's it's one that's here to stay. Any other takers?
I can
think as much.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Anna.
Can I add quickly? I think it has increased flexibility in terms of, I come from a school perspective, obviously, but the flexibility in instruction that has really increased the types of instruction that is offered in schools, and they're going to keep a lot of the good things using Zoom when it's appropriate, but also connected to how to keep the students motivated. Schools have tried to develop programs where you actually digital programs where you go to companies and you can meet people in the companies, but digitally. So you can shadow someone, for example, at a company, and actually working digitally makes it possible to maybe visit more workplaces and come into contact with more people and so on. So schools have really been very inventive, I think, innovative, and try to find different solutions to offer these kind of experiences to students, keep the motivation up.
Oh, you wanted to chip in.
Oh, I was just going to say something similar to Anna, that, it's expanded, I think, in some ways, where people can go, right? They're not just limited to speaking with people in their city or visiting an employer in their city. So I think that is one of the positive things that's come from this, right? I mean, even this conversation we're having now, right? I'm in California. I wouldn't have been able to come and join in person. And so, I think we're expanding for our students who oftentimes just traveling somewhere can be a challenge, right? Even just traveling across the city and paying for the train fare to get there can be a challenge. So in some ways, I think it is breaking down barriers to have more opportunities that are accessible virtually. Obviously, we're not hoping that this takes the place of in-person opportunities at all, but it can be a way to just make that first step a little easier because it happens without having to get there in person. So that's great. And, our program has actually started a whole virtual program because of this. So, in the past, we had brick and mortar offices in 10 cities, but we now have an entirely virtual program. We can actually work with more students in other countries in the US that we didn't previously have a physical presence. So, that's been a big change for our program for sure.
I think it's a very, very good point. I mean, yeah, apart from Zoom fatigue, it is kind of it opens so many new opportunities. As for us today, I mean, it would have been not realistic to bring all ourselves, including our listeners, into one room for a seminar that's just 1.5 hours, and I think it has upskilled us all, right? I mean, it's before COVID, we didn't attend so many virtual events, or I mean, there weren't so many on offer, but it's also, I mean, we all still remember like logging onto our first Zoom, and until we finally figured out how to switch on the camera and all these sorts of things, and now it's just all of our daily business, and for young people who also certainly manage more independently this online interaction, and then we have to watch out that we all get enough of the personal interaction. So yeah, I think this becoming slowly to an end. Yeah, I see that there's maybe some final questions here or there. But the seminar is coming to an end now. So maybe we can, a last thing, Anna, I think you posted your questions just now to only the panelists. Maybe you can just copy and paste it and click answer to everyone while I'm closing here, because then the answer is also seen by all the audience. So it was, yeah, great having you here all together discussing this really important issue. I think that there is, as we said, that there is a lot of key points to make to get this motivation and aspiration in young people, offering the right type of supports everywhere in every location, as Brian said. So obviously national programs, I think, Anna, that's something you started. I mean, there needs to be a national strategy, a national ambition for what should be achieved, and setting targets is often very important, but then it needs to be translated down to the local level. And local can indeed mean, as Brian said, like very granular. It's not a city, it's a neighborhood within a city, and finding solutions for young people and then helping them make this transition either directly from school into work or from school into university. And then also, if they invest in university education, to make sure that they reap the full benefits of what their investment and get on a good trajectory. So thank you so much, everyone. Also to Gunnar again, he's back now online. So
yeah, I was going to thank you for providing this seminar from OECD, Anna, and you, Christine. Thank you very much for this. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, well, it's the pleasure's on our side, and yeah, as we said at the beginning, part of a great partnership for many years with Solar. So many thanks also for your support, and then obviously also for the very interesting insights in the programs that Solar itself is running. So I wish most of you a lovely afternoon, and then to Zoe actually a very good morning still. And yeah, we'll keep in touch, and thank you to everyone for listening in.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
See you.